Hey, welcome everyone. This is Ned from Caspio. Welcome to another episode of Caspio Labs. Before I begin, as always, if you can do me a quick favor, let me know that you can hear me okay, and we will go ahead and proceed. So I'll just wait for somebody to let me know via chat that you can hear me, and we will go with today's content. Hope you guys are having a good Monday. Great. Thank you for the confirmation. Welcome. You guys may see something new today. I decided to remove the background behind me so it's more transparent, and also it's less obstructive. You know, if there's some data behind me and you can't see because of my previous background, I decided to completely remove that. If you guys want me to go back and revert back to what I had before, just let me know. We can always do that. Hey, Katie. Welcome back. Good to see you. All right. So I think we can go ahead and move on with today's class. We have a couple of examples we're going to look at today for news media type applications. The reason why these types of applications are so popular is if you have good data on your website, people are interested in seeing the data and engaging type of content. And that's what media companies do on their websites. They like to provide a lot of data, and if they have ads placed throughout the site, they can monetize and generate revenue this way. I can't tell you how many times I went to Google and I wanted to find a specific recipe or maybe a salary for a specific position. And news media websites usually typically have this type of a data. And I have fallen victim to clicking on ads before, which is okay. Even if I contribute a little bit to their revenue, I'm okay with that. So we're going to look at two examples that are pre-built. And then my third example, we're going to build together in today's live session. Okay. So first example I'm going to show you guys today on this fictitious website that I have is a popular application. I call it user stories. Different news media outlets will have a different name for this application, but user stories is an application where anybody can go to a website and submit a story. So let's say you're out there in the field, you see something good or bad, or you want to report that story. You can go to the website and I can submit that story myself using a mobile device. So if I witness something out there in the field, I can click on that button and I can submit the form. And of course, there is a approval process here for the news media admin to check for validity and credibility of that story before we publish that on our website. You don't want any fake news out there to be posted and published. So the idea here is to submit the form. So I do have a, let's just say, best burger in town. That could be the title. Not too worried about the description right now. We're going to locate the image. So here it is. We're going to hit submit. Oh, I do need to provide a description. Let's just put NA. Hit submit. Let me attach my image once again. Hit submit. Okay, so it's not published yet. It needs to be approved by the admin before that story is visible on the website. So let's go to the admin side and let's hit search. And let's review that story. Once we check all the content, everything looks good. Right now it's not published yet. I can hit inline edit and here I can publish the story. Hit update. And now it's published. If I go back to the website and I reload, I am going to be able to see that story listed here for other people to consume or look at. I can also go to details of that story. I've opened up a different one because I have more text for description. I can see the story and now I can comment on that story as a user. Now I made everything public facing. So anybody who goes to the website will be able to submit a story and be able to comment on a story. You can also make this password protected. So only specific users that log in will be able to gain access to this application. But it's a very popular application that a lot of news media websites like to use on their websites to promote engagement and for people to come back to their website. Okay, so that's one application. The second one that I have is vehicle recalls, right? If you want to find out, if your car is due for a recall, you can go to a database. I found the data on this website called data.gov. I use this website a lot for sample data if I ever need to. I looked for vehicle recall, and then I found this data set in CSV. It has about 26,000 entries. I downloaded that file. Okay, for one, I have that file here on my desktop. Here it is. So if I open up my Excel file, you'll see it has about 26,000 entries inside it. Something like that. On the actual site, if I click on this link here to view the database, it's going to open up 3 data pages that I built. Let me just clear the search. Just give it a second. All right. And it's going to show me all the latest recalls by company, manufacturer. So if I wanted to focus in on, let's say, the 2 biggest ones that have the most recalls are Ford and also Chrysler. So if I look for, let's just say Ford, hit submit, it's going to filter that data for me. And I'm able to see historical data for Ford Motor Company. I can see how many vehicles are potentially affected by this. I can also open up the description to read more data. I decided to truncate my text on the tabular report so everything fits a little bit nicer, but I can read the details. And if I need to, I can call Ford and ask them if my car is due for a recall. And I can bring it in free of charge and they can fix everything for me. Okay, so that's another example of a type of application that you might see on a news website. They have a lot of these databases that they publish for people to be able to, go back to their website, click on these ads, and for them to potentially make revenue. Now, the last example that we're going to look at today, we're going to build this one live, but I thought maybe do a poll, and we can do something sports related where people can go to this page here and maybe submit a form to vote perhaps on who they think will win the NBA title this year. And we're going to build that form together and the chart to display the results. Okay, so let's go back to the home page and let's see how we created this user stories application. It's not very complicated. Let's go inside it. I'll show you my tables. So this application will have 3 tables. Okay, we have the admin table where we have all the administrators. Basically people who are going to be able to approve the stories. I only have 1 sample user inside that table. I have the main table that's going to store all the stories. We're going to hit design so you can see all of my fields. I have my story ID. Always add the ID field at the very top. It's mandatory. You should always have a unique key. I have my title. I have my description, photo. You could have multiple photos too if you wanted to. I only use 1 photo field and I changed the data type to file. We have our date submitted. We need to know when that story was submitted for review and when it was published. And I also have something called a view count, which I set the data type to number. I don't know if I talked about this before, but this is a standard feature in Caspio. Every time a story is viewed, so let's just say we go to this story here one more time when I click on the details page. If you look here in the admin side, you will see this current story has no views yet. So nobody has viewed the story before. But if I click on the details link to read that actual story, now if I reload the web page here from my admin side, I'll be able to see that view count go up by 1. So it's a really cool way for the admin side user to be able to track and see how many times each story has been viewed so that you can see which story is successful and which story is not getting as much traffic. So basically lets you know what stories people are interested in seeing, which is kind of cool. Okay, so we have the view count, and I have my status field for yes and no so that we can, publish or unpublish stories that are listed on the website. So that's my second table, and then my final table is the comments table. Very simple table where I have my comment ID, and now we need to link the story to the comment. That's a one-to-many. One story is going to have many comments. So I need to have my foreign key inside this table so that we can link our comments back to our stories. We have the display name, and we have the date submitted. Display name can also be a username. Let's say, for example, you decided to allow people to register, log in, and then post the story. If you do that, then you're going to automatically have their username, and you can use that username to post as opposed to them providing their display name. So if I go back to the comments here and I open up that form, you can see I have to manually enter in my username and then provide my comment. So here is my first comment. I will hit submit, and I should be able to see that comment directly underneath. But if you don't want the user to put that display name manually, if they're logged in, we can pull that username from the table and automatically display the username in display only mode without having to type that out ourselves. Okay. So those are my tables. Very, very simple structure. Let's go to data pages. And we have two folders here. We have one for the admin level user and we have for public. So under public, we have a simple form to submit the story, which is this one here. If I go back to the stories, I can click on the button here and I can submit my story. So let's go through it very quickly so that you can see how that was created. So I'm using a submission form that's linking to my stories table. I use my style, I use my localization, everything is public, so I don't need to password protect. I included my fields in my form that I'm going to have. And then I have my title field, which I made required. I have my description field, which I turned into a text area, also required field. We have the photo, I made that required as well. Date submitted is a timestamp, and then we have the status, which is unchecked by default. Okay. The reason why I made this unchecked is because when the user submits the story, it needs to be reviewed by the admin person first. The admin is going to check the story, hit update, and then that story is going to be available publicly. But for now, I want that to be unchecked in the table when the story is initially submitted. That's why I left this unchecked. Okay. And then I just have a simple confirmation message. Our team will review your submission, and if your story checks out, we will publish it. Okay, so now let's take a look at the stories. So I went with the gallery view. If you're going to use the gallery view, your information is going to be displayed. Oops, not that one. Let's click. Oh, basically, it's already here. It's going to be displayed like that in a gallery view. Okay. That's gallery. We're going to hit next. All standard here. We're going to hit next. I am filtering my data. And I'm using my status field here as the filtering field because I need to be able to only display the stories that are checked. Remember, when you submit the story, initially it's unchecked. Okay, but the stories, this report is only going to display the ones that are checked. Okay, so now you don't see any fields in the results page field as the results page fields. The reason why is because everything is going to be inside an HTML block. If you guys have attended my previous sessions before, you know that I like to use a lot of HTML and CSS to lay out my data. And this is not very complicated, I promise. This is all very, very simple. I have a simple href tag to take the user to the details page if they click on the image. So I'm displaying my image here. You can see how it's clickable. If I click on the image, it's going to take the user to the details page. Okay. Now, can you accomplish all of this using standard features? Yes, you can. Okay, you can include all the fields in the details. You can include all of these fields in the results page if you'd like. Okay, but I like to polish up the look and feel of my applications aesthetically so it's nicer to the end user. But again, like I said, you can do all of this using standard features as well. Again, I make all of the applications that we build in the live sessions available for you guys to download. So later on today, you will see this in the description of the YouTube video. So you can download it, you can study it, and you can see how I did it. Okay. Notice that I have a simple div with a background color 444. That's a dark background color. That's why here on the front end, you can see a dark background color. My text is white. So here you will be able to see the color of my text is white. Okay, I have another hyperlink here, okay, which again, even if you click on the text, it's going to take the user to the details page. So both of these are clickable to go to that details page. And then I have my date submitted, which you'll be able to see here in the bottom right. The date submitted, you will see text align right. So I'm just aligning my text to the right side. So that's a very simple property and value here to align my date here to the bottom right. Anything else worth mentioning here? We have 3 columns, okay, and no details. Okay, so we have 3 columns, and I disabled my details page because my hyperlink is taking the user to the details page. So now let's take a look at the details view, which is when I click on the image, it's taking me to this page here. So let's open up the story details. Once again, links back to my stories table. I passed the story ID to the details page, okay? So when you click on the story, we pass the story ID as a parameter in the URL. We talk about this in our advanced session, how to pass parameters as query string values in the URL. It's a standard feature in Caspio to pass a value, and then we receive the value in the details view to be able to display information that corresponds to that value. In this case, to this story. So we receive that story ID, and we have the view count included in the details page. And the view count, you will see that we have a standard feature here under form element to use page view increment. So that means every time that story is looked at, there's going to be a page increment or a view increment of 1, +1. That's why in the table or on the front end, on the admin side, we were able to see for that burger story, how the view count went up by 1. And every time somebody looks at that story, we're going to have an increment of 1 every single time. Okay, so this is a standard feature in Caspio. And then inside my HTML block, same as before, I'm just using some simple HTML and CSS to lay out my content. Here on the front end, we have the image here to the left. We have the description to the right. We have the title up here at the very top. And then underneath that, we have the comments. So that's my details page. Again, as I said before, I could also include these fields into my details view if I want to use the standard method. Okay. But I always like to show you guys how you can improve the look and feel just by knowing a little bit of HTML and CSS. This is not complicated at all. This is just a simple padding, width, and organization of the page by using these simple properties and values for inline CSS. Okay? I don't want anyone to feel overwhelmed and intimidated by this. This is as simple as it gets when it comes to HTML and CSS. Now let's take a look at the comments. So here's my comments report, which is the one directly underneath. Okay, this is also very simple. We're going to receive the story ID once again. So I'm using the list layout based on the comments table. Okay, we're going to receive the story ID. Same as before. The reason why is because the comments that you see underneath here need to filter based on the story. So we need to see the comments that belong to that actual story. If I go to a different story, I need to see the comments that belong to that story, which is going to be a completely different ID. Okay? Hey, Tracy, no, I can't hear anything you're saying, in case you're wondering if I can hear you. Sorry, I just saw the comment. But yeah, I cannot hear anything you're saying. Oh, no, can hear fine. Okay, no, I thought you were asking me if I can hear you. Sorry, I just misread the comment. Yeah, thank you for the confirmation. Okay, so let's hit next. We're going to include our fields in the results page. And on the results page, we have the display name, we have the date submitted, and we have the comment in the header section. Again, if you guys have attended my prior live streams, you know how to create that button now for a pop-up form. And all that button is doing is when you click on this button here, it opens up a form. Okay. Let's hit next, next, and we have no details page. And the final one really is just that form that pops open for the comment. That's the final data page that we have. And that's actually very simple. So here is my submit a comment based on the comments table. Okay, there's my comments table. We have all of our fields included. And we need to receive the story ID on the form too. So when this form opens up, we also need to receive that story ID, because when you submit the form, we need to stamp the story ID into the comments table. That's how we're going to know that this comment belongs to that specific story. Okay, and we do that by including the story ID. This is the foreign key in the comments table. We need to include that on the form. We make that field hidden, and then we simply just receive the value as an external parameter, SID, which stands for story ID. If you guys have attended my prior training sessions, you know that I always abbreviate my parameter names. So if it's story ID, I'll usually just say SID, which stands for story ID. We have our display name, which is going to be a text field. Comments and date submitted is a timestamp. Very simple app. Very effective from the user engagement perspective, because, you know, I always like to ask myself, would I use this application if I knew that it existed on a news media website, let's just say? And yes, I would. If I had my phone on me and I see something interesting out in the field and I want to report that, I will go to that website, I will open up my form, take an image, submit this story, and wait for it to be approved. Now, you can gamify this if you wanted to take it a step further by maybe creating a chart and allowing users to be able to see who has submitted the most stories. And maybe you can create some kind of a reward system to incentivize it even more. For people who are submitting the stories, you want to reward them because they're going out of their way to submit these stories, which, you know, ultimately will bring more traffic to the website. So a fun app that you can leverage if you're a news media type outlet and you want to make things more interesting and engaging for your end users. Now, the second one that we have, which we talked about, is the vehicle recall. Okay. Let me just clear the search, resubmit, and I will just go back to my account, close that folder, and we have vehicle recalls. And I'm using 3 different data pages. We have 1, we have 2, and we have 3. Once again, if you guys have attended my previous live streams, you know that my personal preference is to separate the search from the results. In this case, I didn't really need to do that, but I'm so used to doing that because there's more flexibility to separating the search and results, especially if you're positioning the search form in a different location of the website and the results page in a completely different location, either on the same web page or a different web page, by separating them. So the first thing that we're going to look at is the search form. So here is my filtering vehicles. You will need to use a submission form data page. It doesn't matter which table you're going to use. I'm using a simple recalls data table that I have. Again, it doesn't matter which data source you're using because in the end, you're going to be using virtual fields to search the data. Okay, virtual fields don't submit anything to a table. They're just used to display information on the form. I'm using Autocomplete. Autocomplete is like Google search. If you start typing, you're going to see how we view options from the table. And as you begin typing, some options will be removed, and then you'll be able to see other options. Okay, so that's Autocomplete. I am using contains. Okay, we're going to hit the Advanced tab, and you're going to be able to see how I'm passing the external parameter called M, which stands for manufacturer. Okay, so I'm passing the parameter name M. In other words, when I hit submit, I'm going to pass that letter M to my results page and my chart. Both of these 2 data pages are going to receive that letter M, and that's how they're going to know for what manufacturer to filter the data for. Okay, so we pass that little M. We have the same form refreshing or reloading. Now let's take a look at the results page. So there's my tabular format. That's the layout that I chose. We're going to use the recalls data as the data source. Filter data. And now we need to receive that M. So we use the field manufacturer. We hit next. And then in the advanced tab, we're going to receive the value externally, little m. If empty, ignore criteria, which means that if you leave this empty and you hit submit, you're ignoring that value and you're going to display all the data from the table. Okay? You're passing a blank value. It's not going to catch anything. In other words, then display me all the information from the table. Okay? We're going to hit next, and then we're going to include some fields in the results page. That's all pretty standard. Hit next. I didn't make any changes here to my results page. I kept everything the way it is. We're going to hit next. We're going to display 50 at a time. And I'm also sorting my data, the most recent Z to A. And I believe I have disabled my details page, and I did. Okay. And then we have the chart. So let's edit that. I'm using a pie chart. Same data source. Once again, we're going to filter the data based on the manufacturer field. We're going to receive that letter M. Again, if empty, ignore criteria. And then the way I set up my chart is the category is going to be manufacturer, and then for value, we're going to do a very simple sum. Okay. Yeah, I'm doing a sum because it's getting all of the data in aggregate here across the entire data set, and it's adding all of the affected vehicles, okay, potentially affected vehicles. That's the field in my table, and I'm doing the sum. So here on the front end, we can see how many vehicles have been recalled over time for Ford Motor Company. Okay, so if we just look for Ford, the data actually dates back to, I think, let me see how far back it goes. Let's go all the way back to 1966. Okay, and you can see back then in 1966, we had 356 vehicles affected, something due to tires. I don't know what that is. And this is actual data. This is not fictitious data. Okay. And you can see that in the last, I don't know, let's just say 66 years. No, 56 years. In the last 56 years, they have had 191 million recalls, or 192 million recalls for their vehicles. Okay, that's a lot of cars that were affected by, I don't know, tires or timing belt or crankshaft, whatever. Okay, so we can reset the search and go back to the results to display all the data. All right, so that's the second example. Let me know if you have any questions. Hopefully this is all making sense. I just want to show you guys how you can build different types of apps for different industries. This is for news because you will typically see these types of applications with the news media outlets. This is just one example. This is just two examples, but of course you can build much more with this. Now the final example we're going to look at, we're going to build this together, is on sports. And I thought maybe a good idea would be to replace this image and add a form to vote on who people think will win the NBA title this year. Okay. So let's go and open up my CSS. So here's my page called sports. And now you're going to get to see how I go through modifying the HTML document. Okay. So here's that image for sports, right? It's all between this div tag. I'm going to remove the image, and I'm also going to remove the span that's called sports. So on the front end, it's basically the image and the text that you see that overlays the image. So if I go back here, I remove all of that information. Okay, and I'm just going to put as a placeholder Caspio deploy code, which eventually I will put my deploy code right over here. Now, when I refresh the site, actually I need to open this up locally because I haven't pushed it live yet. It's called sports. So let me open up my page called sports. Locally here, you can see how I removed the image. So now let's go to Caspio and let's build a new table. Create a table. Let's say team ID. And let's just have auto number as the unique ID and team. Save that table and let's call it sports. Actually, we're going to do NMA, which is news media apps. I always like to use the same prefix. If my application name is named specifically, then I use almost the same nomenclature for my abbreviation for the prefix for that specific name that I'm building. It's easier later on to export the data. So TBL sports MBA. I don't know, something like that. We're going to hit finish. So that's my table. Let's build a data page. I will build my folder first, and let's call this sports. And inside that folder, we're going to build a brand new data page. Submission form, hit next. Okay, that's my table. Let's call this vote for NBA title form. We're going to use the same style that I use. So let's go with, let's just go with blue. That's fine. And we're going to use English localization. We're going to say hit next. I need that field on my form, hit next. And then for this one, why don't we turn this into a radio button? And we're going to say one option per line. And let's just call this label, who do you think will win the 2022 NBA title? Okay, question mark. And let's just list a few. Maybe Jazz, maybe Warriors, maybe Bulls, and maybe Bucks. We don't need to have too many teams. That's going to be a required field. We're going to hit next. And then when the form is submitted, why don't we take the user to the results.html? So I'm going to create a new page on my website. So when they click submit, we're going to redirect them to that page called results. And on that page, we're going to display a chart that shows how many people have voted for whatever team they clicked on. Okay, and we're going to keep that URL relative. The reason why we keep that relative is so they remain on the same path of the whole entire web page. Okay, so we're going to go from sports.html to results.html, and we're going to keep that path relative. They remain in the same directory. Okay, let's hit finish. Let's take our form, deploy it, grab the embed code, open up the notepad, and just replace that with that. And let me just see what that looks like on the front end. Refresh. Okay, I don't mind that. I can come back here and rearrange my label. I can put the label on top of my radio buttons. I can make everything bigger so it fits nicely on this page. But for now, I'm okay with that. We're not too concerned about the aesthetics. Let's keep things the way it is. And yeah, let's set up our second page. So let me bring in my pages here inside my folder. And we're going to just copy this page. And we're creating a brand new page called results. We're going to open up this in Notepad as well. And now let's find that submission form data page, remove that, and we're going to replace that with results. So let's go back to Caspio and let's build that second data page. All right, we need to create our results. And let's go with the chart. And why don't we do bar chart? That's the right table. We're going to call this view results. I'm going to use the blue style, English localization, hit next. No need to search. Let's just display the chart. I'm not going to filter based on anything. We're going to hit next. And then for my chart, why don't we just say, we don't need to have series from a data in a single field. We can just do use separate field for each series. That's better. And then for y-axis, we can have the NBA team displayed. And then for value, we can just get the team and we can do count. Very simple calculation, okay? We're just counting the number of teams that are being voted for in that table. And we are going to rank them by highest. So count, show me the highest first, and then all the way down to the lowest. And click finish. And let's deploy the results. Grab our embed code. And we're just going to paste that in the results page. Okay, and we're done. I need to push both of these web pages live. Right now, they're still stored locally on my local drive, but I need to make them available on the internet. So we're going to open up my WinSCP that I use. And let me refresh. And we're going to move the results page, make it live. And we're also going to replace the other sports page that I already had in here that now has the data page. And now it should work the way it's supposed to. Let's give it a go. So let's go to sports. And let me share the link with you guys as well. Just do me a favor. If you guys can click on that link too, that would be great. Just do a quick vote. Select any team. I'm going to go with Warriors. I'm going to hit submit. And it's going to take me to the chart. And it's not displaying anything for some reason. There's no data to display in the chart. Wonderful. Why? Let's edit the chart and see why it's doing that. Oh, did I use the wrong table? I may have used the wrong table. Why do I have NBA 2 submissions? Oh, this is what I created earlier today when I was just doing some testing. But this is our new table. I used the wrong table. I apologize. This is the right table here. Yeah. Let me rebuild my chart because I used the wrong table. So just bear with me for a second while I recreate my chart. That's team. That's right. Hit finish. Let me refresh. Okay, that's better. We have Bulls and we have Warriors. Okay, so somebody's a Bulls fan out there. Okay, so something fun like that. You can create a lot of these different types of polls, for your end users when they visit your website. It doesn't have to be for a news media type website. It can be for any kind of website if you wanted to make something engaging for the front end. It's public facing. But that would be the idea, is to be able to interact with your end users when they come to your website. And now they can see how people feel about the teams that are competing for the NBA title. Just a simple example like that. Okay. All right. I hope you guys enjoyed today's session. Thank you, a lot of you, for keep coming back to my Caspio Labs live streams. I do appreciate your time as always. I know I sound like a broken record, but it means a lot to me that you guys come back. We're all here to learn together. I know that we're off. Well, I'm going to be off on Monday on the 21st. We're going to come back on the 28th. And the topic for the 28th is how to build a multi-step form with a progress loading bar. Okay, so that's going to be the topic for the 28th. And what we're going to be doing is creating something a little bit more complex where people can see a progress bar above the forms, but they're going to be able to navigate back and forth between each part of each step. Okay, and I'm going to try to create something dynamic where you can see the line moving as well. So it's not a static image that goes from one step to the other. Okay, thank you, Katie. Thanks for the feedback. Okay, and then the following week, as promised, we're going to do document generation for PDF. Okay, so that's going to be on I think that we're going to be pushing into April. So it's going to be on April 4th. So Tracy, if you're still here, April 4th is going to have PDFs and document generation. And I'll do a session on that. All right. Thank you all so much for your time. I appreciate it. Thanks, Brian. Good to see you. Sometimes I don't even know who's here until you guys comment in the chat. So. All right, so I will go ahead and just close the video. I'll keep the chat open for a few more minutes to see if there are any last minute questions. Again, don't forget to vote for topics. If you guys would like to see something on these live streams, I'm happy to take your suggestions and incorporate them somehow into the live streams. Sometimes it takes me a while to come up with the idea as well. Thankfully, I have a backlog of all the suggestions. It's just that when I get these suggestions, they're very simple. So I'm trying to find ways to take these simple suggestions and make them bigger, include them in maybe a workflow or an application that we can spend more time in the live sessions. Because if I just show what people want to see, the session will be like a minute long, and then we can close the session. And I think something like that can be answered by the support team as well, very quickly. All right. Thank you all so much. I won't keep you anymore. Have a good week. Stay safe out there, and I will see you on the 28th. Have a good week. Bye-bye.